Hello all, thanks for showing up. I read an article about Phil Robinson, who is the director of that wonderful movie, Field of Dreams, one of my favorites, perhaps yours as well. And he said that as they were making the movie, he would come back to his hotel at night and he would think, this is just awful. And you think, boy, that was a messy scene and I didn't do that right. Who's going to watch this? And he wrestled with self-doubt the entire time he was making the movie. And it turned out to be an Oscar nominee for Best Picture and certainly the favorite of many people for many, many years. And so he didn't realize the quality of what he was doing. His ego came in and began to criticize and chide him, which had nothing to do with the quality of his work. And I think we all have that voice, don't we? That self-critical, self-doubting, judgmental voice. You're not good enough, you're not doing it right, you could have done this better. Someone once said that when somebody gives a speech, there's really three speeches you're giving. The one you plan, the one you give, and then the one you wish you gave. And so today, let's shine some light on that negative voice so we can heal it and really replace it with a voice of self-assurance and confidence. When I do lots of coaching, lots of people have this self-doubting voice. And I ask them, where did you learn that? Because you weren't born with it. And I tell them, the critical voice is not your own. I'll tell that to you now. The critical voice is not your own. You can say it as an affirmation to yourself. Now let's say it together. The critical voice is not my own. And without exception, the child had a judgmental father or mother or grandmother, somebody in their family was really heavy on them and criticized them for just about anything they did. And even if they got a report card with all A's and one B, they would say, why don't you get all A's? You can never do enough. And I tell my clients that you were not born with the critical voice, it was adopted. And when you hear a voice, an external voice enough, or even if it's not a physical word voice, what if it's just an energetic voice where the parent is silently or psychically judging or condemning the kid? Well, you absorb that. And if it happens long enough and deep enough, you begin to think it's your own voice. But it's not, it's an adopted voice. And I liken it to some smelly, stinky old cloak that you put on. It's torn and it's heavy and it smells and it doesn't belong to you. But when you wear it enough, you start to identify with it and you think it's really you. And so healing requires disowning that which does not truly belong to you. Let me say that again. Healing requires disowning that which does not really belong to you. And of course, the miracles tells us the only thing that belongs to you really are the attributes of God. Love, well-being, joy, creativity, life force, happiness, playfulness. These are how we were born. This is why we love to be around little children and animals, because they're in their innocent state. They haven't been trained out of their innocence yet, and they still remember who they are. They have not adopted someone else's identity that's been laid over them. So I tell my coaching clients, well, if that voice is coming up now that you're about to get married or change your job or move, this is the fertile moment to heal that voice that's been bugging you for your entire life. And they all agree, yeah, this is not a new voice. This is carried with me through all of my childhood and my adulthood. I said, well, isn't it wonderful now that you're holding it up to light and you could see it clearly, you could tell the truth about it and dissolve it with a higher vision that that's not who you are. This voice does not belong to me. I hereby disown it. I divorce it, I let it go, I release it. And that's the beginning of reclaiming your own self-love, which is our only real right in the kingdom of heaven. There's a story about a princess who was kidnapped at a young age. And she was taken down to the docks. And she was raised as the child of fishmongers. And she grew up knowing how to do the fish thing. And she smelled like the fish thing. And that was her life. And then years later, one of the king's assistants happened to be at the dock. And he recognized the princess. And so the king and queen took her back. And they took her to a beautiful room that was all laid out for her with candles and incense and music playing outside the door. And it was just a soft bed. And it said that she laid down and she got up after 10 minutes saying, I can't sleep, I can't stand it in here. And what had happened was she had gotten so used to living among the fishmongers that when her authentic royalty was offered her, it felt foreign to her. But it's really the other way around. She was born into royalty, and the fish market should have been foreign to her, but because she was raised in it and steeped in it, isn't that interesting word, steeped in it, like you steep a tea bag and the entire water in the cup starts to take on the essence of the tea. Well, if you're steeped in, nothing wrong with fishmongers, it's a good occupation, but it's just for this analogy, that she took on the smells and the lifestyle, and she thought it was her own, until she eventually had to be retrained to claim what she truly owned, which was the palace. And that's the predicament we all find ourselves in, that we have to be retrained to remember who we truly are and what we truly own. And when you take on that voice of self-doubt and said self-judgment, it's not who you are. And so a lot of my coaches, as you all know, I do a life coach training. One's coming up in January if you're interested. So a lot of my coaches, when they do their reports, they have to do a certain amount of practice coaching sessions and report on them. A lot of them say, oh, I don't think I did very well in this session at all. I did this wrong, that wrong, this wrong, that wrong. And then I go to the client's report on the same session, and almost every case, I would say every case, they give the coach far better ratings than the coach gave him or herself. And in other words, it was the coach's self-criticism, self-judgment that made him or her feel like they had failed or didn't toe the mark on that particular assignment. And so there's another thing I noticed about people when I coach them, that most people believe that they're not enough of what they already are. I was coaching one client once. She's just the loveliest, sweetest, almost a saintly lady. She said, I don't think I'm nice enough. I could be nicer. I said, whoa. I said, wait a minute. You're one of the nicest people I've ever met. Why do you think you could be nicer? Oh, I could do this, I could do that. And I realized in that moment that people who have a high value on a particular trait, whether it's kindness or honesty or attractiveness, their value on it is so strong that they could never really meet that value. But meanwhile, because they have the strong value, they're really already the thing they want to be. Am I making sense? Bodybuilders, great fit, cut physiques. Oh, I could have better muscles here. People are into health foods. Oh, I don't need healthy enough. Meanwhile, they're living on bean sprouts and mashed yeast and granola, and I can never eat healthy enough. Or people have beautifully manicured lawns. Oh, that guy down the road has a better lawn than me. But the fact is that the bodybuilders and health food people and the lawn people, they're so intent on having a great presentation or a great practice that they never hit the mark. But they're already doing great. And so I want to suggest to you that you're likely, I wouldn't even say likely, I would say you are doing better than you think you are, that you already enough of what you think you're not enough of. Make sense? And that doesn't mean we shouldn't strive and improve and do better. That's the part of the fun game of life. But let's quit beating ourselves up for making the one mistake out of 100 instead of crediting ourselves for the 99 things we got correct. Everything is perception. Everything is. Are you aware of Sark? She's a wonderful author, Susan Kennedy. She has a lot of wonderful books. S-A-R-K, look her up. She's really good. And she's very funny. She puts her spiritual life into practice in daily life. She does some funny things. She said that once she was coming out of a store and she began to criticize herself for something. And so there happened to be a police car sitting outside the store. She went up to the policeman. She said, "Oh, would you please arrest my inner critic? It's bugging me to death. Take it to jail, would you? I can't stand my inner critic anymore." Well, we don't really need a policeman to arrest it, but we do need to quit putting up with it. You understand? If you owned a business and you had an employee that was ripping you off, that was literally stealing from the coffers and rousing the other employees against you, rebel rousing, and and the open, they were saying, "I'm trying to help you and I want you to win and we're going to have a great business together." But under the surface, the 90% under the 10% of the top iceberg, that they were ripping you off and lying to you and stealing from you and cheating you and hurting you. And what if you finally found out what this employee was doing? What would you do? Well, you'd fire him. I mean, there'd be no question about it. This person is causing mutiny. This person is not helping your business. This person says they're helping your business, but they're really hurting it. And so I want to suggest to you that the ego, the voice in your head that keeps chiding you, should be better, you shouldn't have messed it up, you're stupid. That voice, it purports that it's helping you. It's, "Oh, I'm going to make you a better person. I'm going to make you acceptable. I'm going to make you look in the eyes of your friend. I'm going to help you live up to your parents' expectations." It's promising you all these kudos, but meanwhile, it's ripping you off. It's sucking your blood. It's like a leech. It's like a parasite. It's not helping you in the least. And so that's the person you want to fire. That's the voice in your head you want to get rid of. That's the voice you want to have the policeman come and take away your inner critic. And we all have the voice, don't we? It comes up for me from time to time. But I'm getting better at noticing it and catching it when it comes up and not sitting down to tea with it. That voice may still come up, but you've heard me say 100 times, the dogs bark and the caravan moves on. Which means that little voice goes, nah, 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 nah. So what? So what? Don Juan, the mentor, Don Juan Matus, the mentor of Carlos Castaneda in the wonderful Castaneda series. Castaneda asked Don Juan, a shaman, Mexican shaman, he said, "Will the voice of fear ever go away?" And Don Juan answered, "Well, it might go away, it might not. But until it does, it'll sit on your shoulder and whisper in your ear, Nina, be afraid of this, Nina, be afraid of that." And you say, "Well, thank you for sharing. I'm going to go on anyway." In other words, you hear it, you acknowledge it, and carry on anyway. Don't do the thing that is trying to stop you from doing, because then it will win. And we don't want that voice to win. We want you to win, the real you. That's who we really want to win. So, we all have the two voices in our head, don't we? And the question is, which voice will you feed? And there's another parable about a Native American who came to his medicine man, and he said, "I have two wolves fighting inside me, a dark wolf that's always threatening to eat me, and a light wolf that is threatening to, promising to empower me." And the native said, "Which one will win?" And the shaman thought for a moment. He said, "Well, the light wolf will win." Why is that? He says, "Because that's the one you will feed." So the way we feed the voices in our head is two ways. One is by paying attention to them, and the other way is by acting on them. So the more attention you give that negative voice, except for the purpose of healing it, that's different. But the more you sit down to tea with it and let it seduce you, and you get sucked into its vortex, it is a vortex, isn't it? The more that will become real and it will become your reality. You will go down the rabbit hole of self-criticism. On the other hand, the loving, supportive, empowering, positive voice, that's also a vortex. And that vortex will lead you only to greater good. So the question is, which one are you paying attention to? Now, many years ago, when I started leading retreats, I would have that negative voice come up and it would kind of bug me throughout the retreat. Am I doing the right thing? Did I say the right thing? Hope I didn't insult that person. And then I was about to do a weekend retreat and I decided I would play a game. I decided I would go with my intuition. Whatever came up during the weekend, I would go with my intuition and I wouldn't self-doubt, I wouldn't self-sabotage, I wouldn't self-criticize. I would assume that the guidance I was receiving was correct and it was going to work. And I coasted through, I surfed through that weekend. It was the most successful program I'd ever done to that time. And it was a watershed, it was a turning point for me, because I realized in that moment that the critical voice was not helping me in the least. The trusting voice was the only one that was really helping me. The trusting voice was the only one that worked. And around that same time, I was headed to do a one-day workshop. I was driving to it. And I started to worry, will I do this right? Will people show up? How will they like it? And after a few minutes, another voice came in my head and it said, you know, Alan, you always worry before you do these workshops, and they always turn out great. So is the worry voice really helping you? And I promise you, the worry voice was not helping me do the program any better. It was actually undermining me. And I realized in that moment that that voice was the liar. And in Christianity, they call Satan the liar. It's another name for the devil, the liar. And, you know, in Buddhism and Hinduism, it's called Maya, the illusion. So the illusion is that you're not enough. The illusion is that you're not doing it right. The illusion is that there's some wonderful person you have to become before you're lovable and capable and competent. And those are all lies. That is the liar trying to steal your business from you right behind your back. So what if this week we played the game of trusting the higher voice and acting on that voice, and recognize that when you act on that higher voice, really good things happen. You help people, you enjoy yourself, they thank you, they pay you if that's your business. And you get this wonderful sense of soul reward that I am in my right place doing the right thing. And most of my coaches during the second or third month of their training, when they hand in a report, they say, I know I was born to do this. Finally, I feel like I found something that I really want to do and can do well. Well, that's reward from the inside out that beats any kind of reward you can get from the outer world. So, you know, life is a process of looking at what's not it, defining it, not it as not it, and then shifting to what is it and defining what is it as it, and doing our best to shift from not it to it as quickly as possible and as gracefully as possible, and just letting yourself be good enough right where you are without changing a thing. Doesn't mean you can't improve, doesn't mean you can't grow, but the best growth proceeds from enoughness. Enoughness expands to create real growth. Not enoughness only creates more not enoughness. So that's my message. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you. Hey, one announcement, two announcements. One is I want to remind you that we have two great programs coming up. The second week in December 6th through 9th, I'll be with 5 of my most esteemed, fun, brilliant, heart-centered colleagues, Mike Dooley, Marie Manicherry, Ariel and Shai Kane and Deborah Engel, all phenomenal A-list teachers that I respect. We'll be doing 4 evenings webinars. You'll be able to interact with all of us. So show up, go to my website, alancohen.com. You can register and set your own tuition. And then once again, in January, we're beginning my holistic life coach training. This one will be unique in that it'll be entirely online without an in-person retreat. So if you'd rather do it from the comfort of your home without traveling, this will probably be the only one we do under those formats. So go to my website, alancohen.com, get your application in. It's filling up. It starts January 2022. And then at the end of this year, we're going to take 2 weeks off at the end of December. So we won't have any new broadcasts during the last 2 Wednesdays in December. And then we're going to change our format slightly in the new year. And I'll tell you about that as we approach it. So let's close with a moment of intention, as we always do. I'll speak the word, and I ask you just to think it with yourself, within yourself. I'm ready to be enough. I'm tired of struggling and performing and waiting to become enough. At this moment, I know that God created me in utter perfection. Of course, I can learn and grow in the human world, but in the spiritual world, I've always been enough. I always am enough and always will be. So I now let go. I lovingly release, or even firmly release, that critical voice that has bugged me for so long, that voice from some other person or institution that I've internalized, and I thought it was me, but it's not. And I'm ready to throw off that cloak, that dark, old, smelly cloak. It's so heavy, it's so old, it's so tattered. I don't need it anymore. I'm tired of dragging it around. It's weighing me down. I now cast off the false cloak of self-criticism, self-doubt, self-judgment, and I'm willing to stand in the light. I stand up tall and straight as a divine being. I stand as God created me. I claim the wonderful life that God has in store for me. I claim prosperity. I claim health. I claim right relationship. I claim a career that matches my passion. I am ready to come out of the closet of self-doubt. And I'm willing to be exactly who I am and trust that I am good enough just as I am. And everything I do that proceeds from enoughness will bless me, everyone I touch, and the entire world. This is my new path. I claim it. I do it. It is done. If you care to say with me out loud, and so it is, and so it is. Thanks for coming today.